Hi, I am Krishnamurthy Pammi. In this session, we are going to learn how to organize Agile Release Planning Event effectively. We'll first learn why this planning event is important, what are its goals, who needs to attend this event, how frequently we need to organize this event, how to prepare for this particular event, and how to facilitate this particular event, what are the expected outcomes of this event. All these key levers we will learn in detail now. Let us first talk about why Agile Release Planning Event is important. As I said, there are many planning events that happens on the Agile way of working. The first thing is strategy level mapping. It happens once or twice a year. It happens with CXOs, that is with your Chief Technology Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Executive Officer. So all the CXOs will participate in strategy. Their main aim is how to improvise the return on investment. Yeah, so they basically give direction to the portfolios. Yeah, so basically from each of the portfolios, what is the ROI that they expect from the portfolios, what kind of funding they provide to portfolios, and what they expect from each of the portfolios. So that's what it happens at the strategy level. Yeah, so once the strategy level planning is over, then the input will come to portfolio level. So at the portfolio board level, then depending upon the inputs received from the strategy level planning, so they know how much funds are being invested in this portfolio and what is the expected ROI of the portfolio. So based on the expected ROI of the portfolio, people will actually come up with which products to prioritize, whether we need to come up with new products or we need to enhance some of the existing products which are actually gaining more user acceptance, or shall we have to retire some of the products in our portfolio. So that kind of a planning happens within the portfolio. So portfolio board will say, okay, these are the new products that need to be enhanced, or these are the products that need to be ramped down, or these are the products that basically need to be created or from the concept. Yeah, so this kind of inputs will come to the product. So depending upon the products that are being prioritized, yeah, so product planning happens. Yeah, so in product planning it happens like what products, what features we need to take it up, what is the minimum viable product that we need to take. Yeah, so what kind of releases we wanted to have towards the end user. So this kind of thinking happens in product planning. Yeah, so if you see here, strategy planning, portfolio planning, and product planning, they're all connected, and they are actually gives you the top down view. They gives you the top down view. Now if you see the teams on the ground, they conduct their daily stand-up meeting, they conduct their sprint meeting. Yeah, the sprints and sprint working in sprints, basically each team know what is expected out of that team for that sprint. But that is not sufficient, my dear friends. People should know what is the end-to-end picture that is happening on the product. And probably the teams are working for the part of the product goal. So if you just focus on sprint goal itself, the teams are actually restricting themselves towards only their part, that too for that sprint. But that is not what is expected. That all the teams that are working on a specific product, they should have the end-to-end view. So if you look from daily to sprint, when I say daily, your daily stand-up meeting. If you see sprint, yeah, your sprint schedules. If you look from daily and sprint, you are actually having bottom-up view. Okay, and if you see from strategy, portfolio, and product, you are actually getting top-down view. But these need to be synchronized, right? That is what is the release planning event will facilitate. My dear friends, the release planning event will actually balances the top-down view where the product owner wants the product to be, to the bottom up view, what team thinks is possible to complete. Yeah, so release planning event is a balancing platform. Yeah, so if you conduct the release planning event successfully, yeah, you will actually have a good view of how your product journey is going to be, what it takes to complete the product. Okay, not just my team, but what are all the other teams that are working on my product, and what are the milestones here. That is, if you see here, the goal post: release 1, release 2, release 3, release 4, release 5, release 6. Yeah, so at the end of the first release, yeah, we together, that means the cluster of teams together, right, we will be delivering this kind of the load to the end users, yeah, or this kind of the deliverables we are delivering to the market. Yeah, so release 1 is this, release 2 is this, release 3 is this, release 4 is this. So both time wise and schedule wise, all the teams that are working on the product, okay, and also the end stakeholders will have a view of how the whole product journey is going to be. So this is where the release planning event acts as a guiding post for us. Yeah, so release 1, release 2, release 3, when it happens, and what end users can expect out of it. And it baselines, that means it makes sure that all the people's understanding on the guiding post, that means the checkpoints or the milestones, what we can expect and when. So release planning event will act as a guiding post. So my dear friends, I want to tell you, all the teams that are just focusing only on sprint planning and the daily stand-up meeting, they will be missing this view. We need to have release plannings just to make sure that we know what are all the teams that are working and what are their goals. Together, what are all the features we are delivering and what the end customer is receiving because of our team's effort. What are the cross-team dependencies? What are the possible risks? All those things are being articulated if you facilitate well this release planning event. Yeah, so this is what is release planning event and its significance. So if you wanted to know the goals of this release planning event, it makes sure that product backlog is updated periodically, because release planning event makes sure that all the relevant stakeholders come together, converse. Yeah, in this way, all the important features are added, all the features that are required to that gives good return on investments are prioritized. Some of the unwanted features are being deleted, some of the features are modified. So it makes sure that product backlog is current, and it also ensures that there's a shared understanding on product backlog goals, what are the features, to not just the performing teams but also to the end stakeholders. Similarly, in the release plan also, it ensures that release backlog, that means at the end of that release, what we are going to deliver or what the end users are expecting from us is going to be clear. And again, the shared understanding will be established. When I say shared understanding, not just by one team, all the performing teams that are involved in the product, end to end. Also, the end stakeholders, they will have a common view about what they can expect from the release at the end of that release. Yeah, so this way, if anybody wanted any adjustments, so those adjustments or decisions or changes, they'll be well informed to the teams why this change is required and what is the logic behind it, and accordingly adopting and adjusting will happen across the teams. And if you facilitate release planning event well, it's going to be a fun exercise and it's going to be a knowledgeable exercise. It is going to enhance your understanding of the product. It involves all the teams together. At the end of it, you actually can identify risks well ahead. Yeah, because you, as part of the release planning, you are not just focusing on this release but also upcoming releases. Basically, you'll know these many releases are there, this you can expect this. So at the end of 7th release, we want this, but for that certain hardware need to be procured, and that particular hardware, you can start working on it now. This is if you see the end-to-end project journey. If you look at within the release planning, that means within the specific release, you know how many sprints are going to be. Yeah, so what is important for the delivery of sprint 4, you will know at the beginning of sprint 1. So if at all there are any cross team dependencies, any financial decisions that we have to take, that means we have to procure certain hardware or any third party dependencies, those things you can actually understand at the beginning of sprint 1 itself. What you are going to deal at the end of sprint 4, you will know at sprint 1, thereby you can start addressing those risks effectively. Yeah, so release planning, it ensures there's a shared understanding among all the stakeholders on the product backlog and release backlog. And also it helps you to have effective risk and dependency management. Now let's talk about who attends this event. Yeah, so anyone who needs to be there or who is critical and who has critical information or who can potentially contribute to this planning exercise or to this product. So that means all the team who can actually contribute, they are most welcome. Essentially, the agile teams, the product owners, the sponsors, the management or leadership, the team friends, for example, even though they may not be working for our product, but part of their bandwidth we may be utilizing in terms of their subject matter expertise or DevOps teams, so their concerns. So who can actually contribute to the knowledge of the product, who can contribute to the development, or who can actually contribute to identification of risks, and who can also provide you the better user pulse. All those people, they can contribute to our release planning exercise and they're most welcome. So who are not required? See, if you think that bringing all the agile team members to the release planning event, if you think that it is not necessary, probably each agile team with certain representatives are sufficient. Yeah, so basically we need to make a balance between very less versus more of it. We have to have an optimal team member balance. So basically we have to really figure out carefully about who are required. At the end of the day, who contributes to the product development, who contributes to the risk identification, who contributes to the end user satisfaction, who contributes to the better product maintainability, all those people are required here. Yeah. So now let's talk about how frequently. So far we discussed about why we require this, what are its goals, who attends this event. Now we are actually going towards how frequently the release planning event should occur. Yeah, so ideally the release planning event happens before beginning of each release. Yeah, this has to happen before beginning of every release. We need to have this release planning event. So as I said, there will be many planning events happens. They are strategic, portfolio planning, product planning, release planning, sprint planning, and daily planning. So strategy planning happens 1 to 2 times in a year. Portfolio planning happens 1 to 2 times in a year. Product envisioning or product planning happens 2 to 4 times in a year. Release planning happens 4 to 6 times in a year. On an average 2 to 2.5 months, we tend to have one release planning event. We tend to have one release. Yeah, the norm is at the beginning of every release, it has to start with release planning. Yeah, so this is what is the frequency with which the release planning event needs to occur. Now let's move to the next concept, that is preparation. This is the whole crux of this particular session. Yeah, so the preparation towards release planning event is the whole crux, and the more focus you give towards effective preparation of agile release planning event, the outcome is going to be more effective. That's why the preparation is very, very critical. Let's talk about it in detail now. The first preparation is target business value. The product owner comes to the board and say, fine, this is my product vision and these are my goals of my product. If I look at from the user perspective, the product can be divided into these different themes or these different user goals. Now what are the necessary features that are required? They'll keep those features at the top, and then they start keeping the less optional features downwards. This way, less optional will be towards top, more optional towards down. Then they will try to make a cut there. Yeah, the first cut is going to be MVP. The first release usually happens scope based, because if you release a product with MVP, that makes sense. So that's why the first release planning event focuses on the scope based release, where you target to complete the MVP part of it. If you see the light rose part of it, that is the first cut. Then if you see the thick pink part of it, this is what is the second cut. And third one is the green cut. Fourth one is the light blue shaded cut. So likewise, the based upon the target business value, okay, people tend to come up with the targets for release planning. Yeah, so usually first release of a product can be scope based, but later on it has to be time boxed. Yeah, so release planning should be like the way you conduct sprints every 2 weeks. If 2 weeks is what is the period that you are actually thinking about. Similarly, release planning also, it should happen in a quiet period way. That means in a periodic way. That means if 2 months is the duration you are taking, every 2 months it has to happen. But the first release planning, it has to happen based upon MVP based, because without the MVP, that minimum viable product, if you release it, it doesn't make any sense to the end users. So that's why, my dear friends, yeah, so we need to understand the target business value. We also need to understand the periodicity with which we are actually performing the release planning events. Yeah, so this is the first preparation theme, and it happens among the product owners. So to perform this, the product owners need to come together, they need to discuss, they need to have common opinion about the whole product and how they are cutting the features or the feature scope for each of the releases. Yeah, in reality, what I'm seeing is the product owners across different streams, they don't usually come together and discuss. Only for important meetings, the critical meetings, they come together and discuss, and they cite reasons saying that they are busy with different projects. But my dear friends, I'm telling you, at the end of the day, each business is there because of its end users. Yeah, so to stay in the competition, your product need to be competitive. If the product is competitive, then only our jobs are going to be there. So similarly, I am busy with multiple products, that may not be a viable reason. Yeah, we need to do each thing with focus. Yeah, so that's why I'm telling you, it's very important that, as part of the release planning event, we bring all the product owners together to identify the cut for the release targets. The second preparation is the homework for the teams. So as soon as the product owners identify under product area 1, okay, this is my minimum viable product, these are my less optional features. So probably I am actually choosing this cut under product area for this particular release. So that product area 1 product owner will discuss the associated teams, saying that, guys, this is what I am planning for this particular release. What are your thoughts? So these people will actually think about what are those features. They think they go back to their board and they discuss what are the user stories and what is the acceptance criteria for those stories, and what are the story points, what is the team velocity trend, what are the dependencies we have, constraints, and what is the definition of done, what is definition of ready, whether the stories are definition of ready or not, and what risks are there, what issues are there. Each team basically does this kind of a due diligence. They provide inputs to the product owner stating, okay, you can take these features or you cannot take these features. Probably this kind of scope for this particular release under this particular product area is achievable. Like this, they provide inputs. So each product owner under each area, they discuss with each teams. Okay, so and they both discuss together and they do certain homework and then come back for the release planning event. Okay, I discuss with these teams and my team and I are together on this particular product area, and we are basically targeting for this kind of features for this release, and my release target for product area 1 is like this. Similarly, product area 2 product owner will discuss with associated teams. Yeah, the teams will definitely ask for, you please make sure that stories are definition of ready compliant. So most of the times, friends, what happens is people put pressure on the development teams. I see certain areas wherein product owners, they don't detail the stories well ahead of release planning. Instead, they just put a high level objectives, and they ask the development team to estimate on top of it. It is not fair. So definitely the development teams need to push back, saying that if the story is not definition of ready compliant, then I can't take it up. So for this release, so we have to push that kind of push back to the product owners, and we have to help product owners to make sure that user stories are properly detailed and they are definition of ready compliant. Okay, this is basically because we are doing at the beginning of the release, we want at least 70% clarity here. Yeah, 70 to 80%, because we can't expect 100% clarity at the beginning of the release itself, but at least 70 to 80% of the clarity we should have. The more clarity we have, the more quality we will be having. Yeah, so this kind of exercise, that means the release goal is achieved by respective product owners. They discuss with their respective teams. This all happens behind the scenes. So far, we have not started the release planning event. So these things happen. For example, let's assume that 2 weeks down the line, the release planning event happens. The product owner and their associated teams, they may use the product backlog refinement sessions to take the inputs of the teams on the upcoming release planning goals in mature teams. Yeah, so likewise, we ask the product owners and the development teams to work together, to do some homework together, and they need to come back saying that the load, the payload, or the scope cut for that release under that particular product area is being discussed, well thought, and they come prepared with the dependencies, risks, and issues for the release planning event. Yeah, the third one is how to organize the release room. Yeah, so we need to organize the release planning room. It's going to be a big room. Okay, if you see on one wall, we have the dependencies listed. On the other wall, you have the planning wall where sprint-wise, team-wise goals are listed. On the other wall, there's the risks are being identified. And on the other side, the action items are being pasted. On the other things, the issues are being identified. And you have teams, you have placed to ensure that teams are sitting together in a star fashioned seating arrangement. And you have the decisions made, definition of done and definition of ready, working agreement, product roadmap. And while you enter into the the release room, you have the purpose of the release planning event documented on a chart, and you have a vision of the product also charted on the chart. So my dear friends, it looks very, very clumsy or cluttered, but we will analyze and we will understand each of these things one by one. But I just want to let you know, this is how the release planning room looks like. Yeah. So next one is we are actually taking the planning wall, because in this particular diagram, we said, we are going to have the charts pasted on each of the walls. So we will analyze each of the wall in detail now. The first one is planning wall. Yeah. So we'll say, okay, this is the release 4, and this release 4 is going to start on this date, and it is expected to end on this date. And these many teams are going to work, and I have 5 sprints for this particular sprint, for this particular release. Now, how do we identify the number of sprints required for a release? It depends upon the amount of uncertainty we are dealing with. It amounts of ease of getting the feedback from the end stakeholders. It's also how long the priorities can remain unchanged. Okay, and it also depends upon the sense of urgency, and also the organization maturity with respect to the hardware or implementation of it. For example, if you have continuous CI/CD enabled, then probably you don't require many hardening sprints. At the end of the sprint itself, you can actually merge the code to the production. But if you think that your organization is not that ready with respect to continuous integration and continuous deployment, then you require more hardening sprints. So based on these parameters of amount of uncertainty, ease of getting feedback, how long priorities can remain unchanged, sense of urgency, hardening the sprints. Based on these parameters, we'll basically decide how many sprints are required in each release. And this is what it is, the planning wall preparation. So we'll have this kind of wall ready, and we'll have this kind of arrangement ready on the wall, and so that people will post their post-its saying that these are the high level epics or sub level epics we deal with. Yeah, so I have seen certain teams where they can as well come up with the stories pasting on this particular kind of wall. They say these are my targets. Okay, my sprint 1 stories are going to be like this, sprint 2 stories are going to be like this, sprint 3 stories are going to be like this. Yeah, so as I said, the third thing, how long priorities can remain unchanged. Yeah, based on this particular thing, we encourage teams to come prepared, because as I said, product owner and the concerned teams, they'll be working here. This is the homework we have given. So the output of that homework, they are going to come here and paste these things here. But it is a preparation event. Yeah, so we'll make sure that the arrangement is available for them. Now the next one is dependency. Yeah, so which team is depending on which team? This is the source team, this is the assigned team. So if you see here, D1, that is dependency 1, that this is being raised by team 1 on team 2. Similarly, D2, again the source team has a dependency on team 2. Yeah, each dependencies, they need to be pasted here, and each thing should identify when the dependency got raised. Each dependency need to be detailed, saying that when the dependency got raised, which is the source team who is a consumer of that dependency, to whom it has been assigned, and what is the dependency is all about, by what time the source team wants that dependency to get resolved, and what is the impact if the dependency is not met, and what is the threshold ETA. That means by threshold ETA, if this particular dependency is not resolved, what will happen is there will be impact to the schedule, or there will be impact to the deliverables. So ETA and threshold ETA. Yeah, so this is the dependency wall, where each team will come up with their own dependencies on the other teams, so that they can achieve their release planning goal. Yeah, so now coming to the next one, that is other board, like risks. Okay, what kind of risk they foresee, and what is the risk, what is its impact, how many teams are impacted because of it. Because if you see, by looking at the dependency board, you will basically understand, okay, there are certain risks which impacts not just one team but multiple teams. And what is its impact score, what is the probability score, what is the total score, the multiplication of impact and probability, and what is the mitigation action. This is what A1 is actually coming from risks to action items. Similarly, issues, impact, impacted teams, and what is the action you are taking, on whom you are actually assigning to, and those actions you basically take it out. So basically, risks are futuristic events, they have not yet happened. Issues are already occurred. Yeah, so you basically analyze your risks and issues, and you come prepared with actions, and basically you will say, these are the actions I am identifying, these are the risks I have, these are the issues I have, and these are the decisions made. For example, because the leadership team will be there, or because the critical contributors to the product are there in the release planning event, they'll say, okay, I'm taking this risk, you can take this kind of decision. So that kind of hard decision, deep impact decisions in the presence of the stakeholders, you can always take. Yeah, so that's what it is. Yeah, so other than this, what is the meeting purpose? It has to be well established. What are the working agreements? For example, we don't want people to come with their electronics, and people should be focusing on their meeting purpose, and product owners should be available when needed, and product owners should listen to the developers. Okay, and sufficient conversations should happen in case of deep impact decisions. Likewise, we can actually agree on working agreements, and certain part we can write and certain part we can open to the team. Please remember that we are still in the preparation phase. Yeah. So definition of ready. Yeah, so what is the definition of ready for each of the stories? Yeah, and definition of done. At sprint level, when somebody says I'm done, what it is? at the user story level, at the sprint level, at the release level. So we'll basically come up with meeting purpose, working agreements, definition of ready, and definition of done. So we'll make sure that based on previous knowledge, and we will write as much as possible, but however we'll also give some space so that we'll discuss in the actual release planning event and we'll update it. Yeah, so friends, and we also need to come prepared with an agenda. Yeah, so whoever is opening the release planning event, usually the chief product owner or the sponsor, we need to make sure that an agenda is prepared for them. Yeah, so opening remarks, like what is the meeting purpose, why we are conducting this meeting, because my dear friends, release planning event, it involves most number of teams, crucial teams. Yeah, so the amount of hours, for example, even if they spend around 3 hours, and let's assume that 20 people are there, 20 into 3, 60 hours of work. Yeah, so if you convert into cost by multiplying with their hourly salary, it's so much. Yeah, so basically this particular release planning event, it should have a clear purpose and what's the condition of satisfaction. So what the chief product owner or the sponsorer expects out of this particular meeting, what is the product vision and product roadmap, and any changes, because we will just say this is basically we're preparing the agenda. Any changes, because we will prepare with whatever information we have at our hand, but we will ask the stakeholders saying that, do you wish to ask for any changes? Do you want us to change any change to this particular agenda? Similarly, working agreements, here we have seen working agreements, so we'll put it here and we will review it and update it in the actual release planning event. And then proposed prioritized scope for the release, planning data, that means team wise velocity, and definition of done and definition of ready, target release date and number of sprints involved, and reality versus plan. We will say, look friends, this release planning event is going to last for 4 hours. First 1.5 hour is first time box one. So at the end of first 1.5 hour, whatever is the outcome, we'll call the critical stakeholders, so that they come and they understand what's happening for 15 minutes. Again, they'll go another 1.5 hours. So we'll do this release planning event, and so we will have another 15 minutes brief to the whole stakeholders. This way we will optimize all people's time. So certain stakeholders, they don't need to be available all through during the release planning event. So, but however, that 15 minutes brief at the end of time box 1 and time box 2 and time box 3, those are very important and all people will come. Similarly, we need to gain commitment from the team, and then we need to finalize the release plan along with product roadmap, risks, issues, actions, and decision made. And then we'll have a closing retrospective on how the release planning event has happened. My dear friends, this release planning event requires management commitment. It requires participation from all the critical people. It requires a very good facilitator. Yeah, otherwise whole release planning will go for a toss. Yeah, so we are preparing the agenda as well. Yeah, so this is wow. If you see here, if you see as you enter, the purpose is there, the vision is there, and the issue wall, the definition of done, definition of ready, and the dependencies wall here, what kind of decisions we made. This is what is the planning wall, number of sprints versus number of teams involved. On the right hand side, the risks wall. Yeah, so and then on the towards right side here is action wall. So earlier when we have seen this particular slide, it was like clumsy. But now, as we have detailed each and everything, it is very clear. Yeah, friends, this is how the preparation goes. So now we are actually going towards facilitation. So let's start what will happen in facilitate events. Yeah, so you have the agenda ready. Yeah, focus area, right? So you will make sure that the sponsors or chief product owner, they open up. They start the meeting with opening remarks stating, this is the meeting purpose, this is the conditions of satisfaction, here is the product vision and product roadmap, and we will ask the participants whether you wish any change to this agenda. So prior to this, we will schedule the release planning event with all the participants that we have identified. We will also work with their management team to make sure that they are available for our event. Most of the times what happens is, even though we schedule meeting and we tell them the importance of this event, some of the times most of the critical people, they may be missing in this event. So that will impact the quality of outcome of this release planning event. That's why we have to make sure that we work with their management team as well to ensure that they come, all the critical people come for the release planning event. Yeah, so we will ask those people. So once they come to the meeting, we'll ask them, here is the meeting purpose, here is the vision and product roadmap, and this is what I want at the end of this release planning event. This is how the agenda is looking like to be. Do you wish to change the agenda? So what is the agenda? Here is the opening remarks, here are the working agreements. So we will make sure that we'll review the working agreements, we'll update it. Similarly, the proposed prioritized scope for the release. For this release, this is the target scope we are looking product area wise. Planning data, that means to make the decisions by the stakeholders. We will ensure that team-wise velocity and capacity information is also available. And then definition of done, definition of ready information is available for the team. So we'll review and update it if required. And then what is the target release date and how many number of sprints involved. And then we'll come to the main point, that is reality versus plan. So basically we will say, look guys, this release planning event is going to last for about 4.5 hours. Every 1.5 hours, we will have a 15 minutes a brief meeting to actually conclude what has happened, to what extent we came, and what is going to be our goal for next 1.5 hours, like this. So time box 1, time box 2, time box 3. So this is the time box duration. At the end of each time box, we will update the stakeholders about the summary, and then we'll gain commitment about this particular agenda, and then we'll go ahead. Yeah, so we'll say that we will at the end of this release planning exercise, we'll come up with the updated product backlog, risks, issues, updated release backlog, and decisions made. And then ultimately we'll close with a retrospective on how this release planning event has happened. Again, I'm saying we are actually taking a good chunk of people, their time to this particular event. So it has to be facilitated well. So that's why a retrospective is needed, so that the learnings we can take for the upcoming release planning events. Yeah, so this is how the opening agenda will make sure the chief product owner or the sponsor or the leadership team, they open it up with the opening remarks, and we have the agenda ready. Similarly, now, so people are actually coming into this room where they know the purpose, they know the vision, the definition of done, definition of ready, decisions made, the agenda, the working agreements, product roadmap. Similarly, the planning wall, dependency wall, issue wall, action wall, and risk walls. So all those things, what it is, why it is there, all those things are being identified. So now what happens is people will actually do the release planning exercise. So there will be a time box. Yeah, so let us say that 1.5 hours of time box. So each team, yeah, so because they have done their ground exercise already, they come and paste their stories here sprint wise, and then they'll also paste the dependencies, and then they discuss during those time, saying that look, for me to perform this particular story in this particular sprint, I need this input from this particular team, or this story must have been completed. Unless that upstream story is not completed, I can't start this. So I have this dependency. So as and when they paste the stories here, they will figure out the dependencies here. They come and write the risks over here, and they'll also identify any issues that already occurred or written here. And then basically they will discuss, like among the teams, among the key stakeholders, decisions and discussions happens. Those conversations are very, very rich. The facilitation makes a lot of difference here. Yeah, so they discuss about it. So time box 1, let's say 1.5 hours. So they do this exercise, they discuss dependencies, they discuss risks, issues. They, as and when they identify, they paste it here. So they ask the responsible people, and then the action items are being identified here. So this all happens on fly. Yeah, we don't need to wait for the time box 1 to get completed. Yeah, so at the end of time box 1, all the people across the floor, whoever is needed across the floor, I said whoever is needed. Yeah, so those people will come there. So probably if you require certain input from the senior management in terms of funding required, so you can actually ask them whether I should go in this approach, on that approach. So you will document their inputs, and you will actually translate them into proper actions. So what is happening here is dependencies, risks, issues and actions, they are happening on fly with shared understanding with the consent of all people. And now at the end, see, if you see here in this particular example, 5 sprints are there. Now you are talking about risks, issues, dependencies at the beginning of a sprint itself. Yeah, so this will give a lot of time for people to act and address those risks well ahead and dependencies well ahead. So this will actually balances and it gives a good focus on dependencies, risks, issues and the actions. Yeah, so what are the expected outcomes from the release planning event? Yeah, the outcomes are the release backlog. Yeah, so it says that, yeah, sprint wise, team wise, these are the expected stories. Okay, it says the release number 4, it is the start date, it's the end date. So X means the number of release. Yeah, in this release that is expected to start on this date, expected to end on this date, and the sprints are going to be like 5. Just I'm taking an example, it can be 4, it can be 6. Yeah, so team wise, sprint wise goals are clear. That way, thereby you have the release backlog is now ready and the team comprehends the whole. So in earlier scenarios where teams are just restricted to their sprints, they just know what is expected from them for that sprint. Now they know what is expected from them in upcoming sprints in this release. Also, they also have a view of what other teams are also working. Thereby, they have the holistic picture of the product for that release. Yeah, so there is a shared understanding among all the performing teams, all the end users about what it takes for them to deliver to the goal that they have committed for that particular release. Yeah, so there is release backlog. The next one is dependencies. Yeah, we have already discussed. So these dependencies are being identified clearly, and I'm telling you, my dear friends, if you actually perform this well, these walls are going to be beautiful. Yeah, these swim lanes, dependencies. So usually what we do is we keep that dependency wall, risks wall, just like that for the entire release duration, so that people come over there, they update it at the end of every sprint, and any dependencies that got resolved are being striked off. Upcoming dependencies, they are being labeled there. So it gives a very good shared understanding, and execution will go in a smooth way. Yeah, and as I said, the risks along with its impact and the risk score, issues. And so the moment you have a scientific way, a logical way of ranking the risks and issues, then you know which risks you have to address first, and the actions also you can prioritize, and decisions also you can prioritize. Yeah, so this is what is also is the outcome of release planning exercise, and we'll keep these things constantly updated as we move from one sprint to another sprint. That we actually do it using Scrum of Scrum meetings, and retrospective outcomes also is used to ensure that the risks and issues and actions and decisions are constantly updated throughout the release. Now finally, when it comes, we just do a retrospective. It's a quick retrospective. What went well in this particular release planning exercise? So this retrospective is for the release planning event. Yeah, so did we identify all the stakeholders? Did the people come together? Yeah, so right from all the levers that we are talking about, yeah, the goals, the attendees, the frequency with which we are occurring, the preparation, facilitation, outcomes. So on all these things, basically we do a retrospective together, and then we'll basically adapt to the learnings for the upcoming release planning events. So what did we understand so far? First thing we understood is release planning event is it's very important exercise. Okay, so top down view and bottom up view, there need to be synchronization. Otherwise there is a danger that teams will dwell in their own shelf for that sprint. So that is not what we expect. We want the teams to comprehend the whole. Yeah, so basically release planning event balances the top down view and bottom up view, and it has to be facilitated with care, because we are involving the critical people of the organization. So it needs to be organized with more care, So that's why we need to know why it is important, what are its goals, who attends, how frequent it happens. The preparation has to happen properly, the facilitation has to be done with care, and the expected outcome should be there. I thank your interest to learn, and I look forward to add more value add sessions in future. Thank you.